The day begins on the edge of a rocky stream, where the girl stands still longer than usual to read the terrain. She studies the stone cover the drier patch above the wet ground, and the distance to the water, deciding which spot can truly become. She does not rush into building. The first task is choosing the right position, because a temporary shelter only works when it uses the terrain to its advantage. That patience makes the opening believable before the labor begins. She must understand. Once the shelter spot is chosen, the story moves into gathering material. Bamboo poles and rough lengths of wood come back one trip at a time, without drama but with certainty. With every new piece, the first real intention becomes clear. She is trying to lift her body away from the damp. This stretch matters because it shows that hand-built living never starts with the beautiful part. Before there is cover, before there is fire, the material must first be in place. She drags, sets down, turns, and repositions pieces again and again to create one stable work zone beside. By this point, the first poles begin to lie in parallel over the stone base. She tests the surface, the spacing, and slowly lifts the sleeping level away from the ground. Even that small change alters the meaning of the place. It stops being only a rocky bank and starts becoming somewhere a person can endure. As the raised base becomes clearer, the viewer can finally measure the structure as something real. It is not finished yet, but it already proves that the earlier labor was not blind preparation. From this moment on, the shelter moves from idea into a form that can actually be used. Once there's a temporary place to sit and set things down, she shifts into making fire. It is a natural transition when the ground setup is finally safe enough. The next priority is no longer building upward, but bringing warmth and the ability to cook into the space she just created. The flame changes the entire atmosphere. The worksite is no longer just a place where material is piled. It begins to feel lived in. Firelight, light smoke, and the concentration in each small movement make the shelter less raw and much closer to something that can truly hold a person. The cooking remains very simple, which fits the spirit of the video. Nothing is exaggerated to make the story look bigger than it is. That restraint helps the viewer trust the rhythm on screen. She is doing only what is necessary to turn temporary shelter. After fire comes water. She returns to the stream to rinse, cool down, and restore balance after the heavier movement. Here the water is not just background scenery, it is part of the living cycle, helping the body settle and giving the earlier labor a logical pause. When she returns to the shelter, the structure now carries signs of actual use. A place to sit, a rhythm of pause, a feeling of occupation rather than mere construction. That is one of the strongest values in this clip. The shelter starts proving its function. But the story does not stop at merely usable. In the next phase, she gathers more material to improve the shelter. This is where the video works well, logically. Only after the basic setup is already functioning does she spend effort on refinement. Better cover a more comfortable surface and a stronger sense of protection from wind and spray. She adds details that are no longer just about survival, but about staying there with less strain. This matters because it reveals the difference between a place that merely shelters and a place that can actually be lived in. It feels finished. Only when the body can relax, instead of constantly fighting the ground moisture and moving air. Bamboo suits this kind of shelter because it's light, yet strong for its own weight. Its nodes help the stalk stay stiff along its length while still keeping enough flexibility for temporary outdoor structures. After the harder material comes the softer layer. As she arranges leaves and surface cover, the shelter starts changing from a load-bearing frame into a space that can actually receive the body. This is where the craft work and the lived feeling of the video finally meet. The smaller adjustments matter more than their appearance suggests. Every repositioned piece and every added layer reduces the friction between the human body and the rough terrain. For that reason, refinement here is not decoration. It is what makes the shelter trustworthy for an overnight stay. By the end of this section, the shelter carries all the signs of a complete environment: a raised base, the memory of warmth-layered cover, and a softer surface. The story can now move quietly into its final phase, where the structure is no longer explained through labor, but tested through actual use as As the day turns toward evening, the rhythm slows down naturally. She returns to the fire, the food, and the shelter that has just been made more complete. In this slower pace, the viewer finally feels the real value of all the building work. It creates a space where life can continue, not just a place to survive for a moment. The movements now are no longer as heavy as they were earlier in the video. She checks, rearranges, feeds the fire, and handles the small tasks around the shelter. That calm is the strongest proof that the structure is working. When a shelter does its job well, the person inside it no longer has to keep fighting every second. Night is also when every earlier decision is tested again. The distance from the water, the height of the sleeping platform, the stability of the bamboo frame, and the placement of the fire all begin to reveal whether they were truly wise choices. The video never has to say it directly because the images. One of the strongest choices in the ending is that it does not force a fake climax. Instead, the clip proves the structure through quiet moments, sitting back, eating in a slower rhythm, and simply allowing the shelter to do its work. In the closing moments, what began as a bare, rocky bank beside the stream has become a small but ordered place with warmth and the ability to hold a person through the night. That is why the whole sequence feels complete, without exaggeration, and simply by doing things in the right order, she turns rough terrain into a believable sense of safety. If you enjoy slow, honest storytelling built around real work like this, subscribe and stay through the final shot. The quietest part of a video is often the part that lasts the longest in memory.